Good day, future lead pastors. This is Sir Yancy, and I hope that you are doing great today because in this video, I will give you 10 multiple choice tests based from your major subject, literary criticism. I know that most of you are familiar with our literary approaches under this subject, but let's put that to test and review each questions. And don't worry because I am here and I will explain each item, and hopefully that this video will help you become a certified lead passers. Are you ready? Let's go. For our first question, this is a literary approach that focuses on understanding an author's life and experiences to interpret their works. A. Feminism. B. Formalism. C. Biographical criticism. D. Structuralism. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to write your answers. And the correct answer is letter C, biographical criticism. Why? Because biographical criticism is a literary approach that examines how an author's life influences their own works. So the idea is that by studying the author's background, personal background, it may be their beliefs, it may be their historical context, their personality, their personal experiences, we can gain a better and deeper understanding on the text that they have written. So that's biographical criticism. Now, why the other choices are incorrect? It is because feminism focuses on how literature represents gender rules and especially the rules and experiences of women in the story, and it also examines power structures, stereotypes, and inequality in the text, gender inequality to be specific. Feminism is not about the author's personal life, but about how gender is being portrayed in the literature. Now let's proceed to letter B, formalism. Well, formalism focuses strictly on the text itself. Its structural language, symbols, and styles being used in writing the text. And well, for letter D, structuralism looks at the literature as part of a larger system of language and the culture structures. It analyzes patterns, symbols, and underlying rules that shape stories and meaning. Well, it's more about universal structures in language and narrative than the author's personal experiences. So the correct answer for this question is letter C, biographical criticism. Okay, now let's proceed to question number 2. Ivan is a student who is required to critically analyze the Hunger Games through a Marxist lens. What is she most likely to put emphasis on? A. The romantic conflicts between Katniss and Peeta. B. The symbolic significance of the Mockingjay as a literary motif. C. The power struggle between the capital and the districts and how economic oppression sustains class control. D. The use of first-person narration to build suspense. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to write down your answer. The correct answer is letter C. Why? Because when we use the Marxist lens in analyzing a certain literary text, we focus on the class struggle, economic systems, and power structures, and how the ruling class maintains control over the working class. So, in this case, in Hunger Games, the ruling class here are the capital, and the working class are the districts, especially the District 12, which is poorer. Now let's take a look with the other choices, why they are not the correct ones. Let's have first letter A. The romantic conflicts between Katniss and Peeta. Well, romance is about personal feelings, not about money or power. So These emotional feelings are more suited to a psychoanalytic or the feminist analysis. Now let's have letter B. Well, symbols are more about meanings and themes, while Marxist critics care more about class and economic struggles. Letter D. Well, this is about how the story is told from the word narration, not about class and power. That's not what Marxist critics focus on. So the correct answer is letter C. Now let's have question number 3. If a student reads a novel and connects it to their personal experiences and emotional response, they are using which lens? A. Psychoanalytic lens. B. Marxist lens. C. Formalist lens. D. Reader response lens. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to answer. And the correct answer is letter D. It is because reader response less focuses on how the reader feels and what personal experiences they bring to the story. So, um, the meaning of the meaning of the literary text depends on the feelings and personal experiences of the reader. Now, let's take a look with the other options why they are wrong. First, let's have letter A, psychoanalytic lens. Well, this lens focuses on how the characters behave in the story, how they think in the story, and of course, the psychology of the characters or the author himself or themselves, not the reader's personal feelings and personal experiences. Now let's have letter B, Marxist lens. As what I have mentioned to you earlier, the words that we can really connect to this are class, money, labor, power, etc. Now let's have letter C. It's not formalist lens. It is because it focuses only in the structure, style, and the language being used in the text, not the meaning itself, but the structure, style, and language. So the correct answer here is letter D, reader response. For number 4, in Freudian theory, which part of the psyche is responsible for moral judgment and guilt? A. Ego. B. Id. C. Superego. D. Shadow. And the correct answer is letter C, superego. Now, actually, Sigmund Freud divided psyche into three: the id or the desire, ego, the rational mediator, and superego, the moral conscience. Well, the superego imposes guilt and moral judgment or ethical judgment, which is the best answer for this question. So let's proceed to why the other choices are not the correct answer. It is because first, the id represents primal urges and instincts. They're part of the mind that wants instant pleasure. Now let's proceed to letter B, the ego, because this mediates between the id, superego, and reality. This actually part of the mind that balances out the two other psyche. And obviously, shadow is not the correct answer because this is a Jungian concept. This is a concept from Carl Jung. Now, shadow represents the hidden, darker parts of yourself. So this is actually part of the psychoanalytic theory, these concepts. And now for question number 5, Tricia is tasked with writing literary analysis using a deconstructionist approach. What should she aim to do? A. Identify how the author's personal background shaped the story's event. B. Analyze how the text language reveals contradictions and undermines its own apparent meaning. C. Focus on the moral lessons the author wants to teach readers. D. Focus on how the main character's journey reflects historical events. And the correct answer is letter B. Why? Because this constructionist approach looks at how a text contradicts itself and how language is not always clear or stable. So Trisha, the student who tried to use the this constructionist approach, should focus on the hidden meanings, the contradictions in the text, and how the text may undermine its own message. Now let's take a look why our choices are wrong. First, letter A. Well, this statement is more like a biographical approach. Well, the critics who uses biographical approach in viewing a text usually focuses on how the texts are shaped by the personal backgrounds of the authors. And now for letter C, obviously this is not the correct answer. It is because these only focus on the moral lessons, which is not the deconstruction. And deconstruction questions fixed moral interpretations and explore how those messages may be contradicted or destabilized by the text itself. And letter D is not the correct answer. It is because the statement is more like a historical or cultural approach, which looks at how a text is shaped by the time, place, and culture in which it was written or said. So the correct answer here is letter B. Okay, for question number 6, who among the following critics introduced the concept of the intentional fallacy? A. Roland Barthes, B. T.S. Eliot, C. W.K. Wimsatt and Monroe Birdsley, D. Harold Bloom. And the correct answer is letter C, W.K. Wimsatt and Monroe Birdsley. Well, they are the ones who introduced the concept of intentional fallacy in their 1946 essay with the same name. They argued that the meaning of the literary work should not be derived from the personal intentions or the biography of the authors, and it should be derived from the text itself. So let us see why the other choices are incorrect. It is because letter A, Roland Barthes, is a significant literary theorist, and he is best known for his essay The Death of an Author, which is also questions the authorial intention in a literary text. Now, T.S. Eliot is a major poet and critic, and though he influenced the new criticism, but he did not directly engage or coin the concept of intentional fallacy. But he has the same idea of the impersonal theory of poetry. So letter D, Harold Bloom, he is best known for his theory of anxiety of influence, which deals with how poets are influenced by their precursors. His work is more psychoanalytic and canon focused. And now for question number 7, a student wants to focus on the character Katniss Everdeen in the novel The Hunger Games. He wants to critically analyze how Katniss represents women in a society with power conflicts. What literary lens should he apply? A. Read response criticism, B. Marxist criticism, C. Structural criticism, D. Feminist criticism. The correct answer for this question is letter D, feminist criticism. Why? It is because it is stated in the question that Katniss represents women in a society. Well, in a feminist criticism, the only focus are the feminist representation in a text, the gender inequality, the power struggle between women and men, etc. So let us take a look why the other choices are incorrect. It is because reader response criticism focuses on how the reader feel about the text and how they define or make meaning with the text that they've been reading. So letter B, Marxist criticism, of course, as what I have mentioned to you earlier, that this focuses on the power struggle, the social class, the bourgeoisie, and the proletariat. So letter C, structural criticism, we take a look at the language as a whole being used in a text. So the correct answer for this question is letter D. And now let's have question number 8. Which of the following best explains the influence of linguist Ferdinand de Saussure on structuralist criticism? A. He emphasized authorial intent as central to interpretation. B. He proposed that meaning in language arises from a relationship between signs. C. He focused on the economic base of literature. D. He introduced the concept of Oedipus complex. And the correct answer for this question is letter C. Why? It is because Ferdinand de Saussure is a Swiss linguist and is considered one of the foundational figure in structural thought. His theory or his key contribution in his theory of the sign, which he defined as being made of two parts, which is the signifier and the signified. Well, the signifier is the word, sound, or image. For example, the word tree. Now, the signified or the other part is the concept or idea that the signifier represents. For example, the mental image of the word the tree, which is our signifier. And now let's proceed to the question number 9. Well, a student is studying Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, paying close attention to how Bronte's own experiences as governess and a woman in Victorian England shaped the novel's themes of independence and social class. Which critical approach is the student using? A. Feminist criticism. B. Biographical criticism. C. Reader response criticism. D. Post-colonial criticism. And the correct answer for this question is letter B, biographical criticism. Well, a biographical criticism examines how an author's life, personal background, and historical context influence in their writing. Well, in this case, in this question, Charlotte Bronte actually worked as a governess, just like Jane Eyre in the novel. Well, the student is connecting her personal or the author's real life experiences and other information to the novel's themes. Well, this is exactly what biographical critics focusing on, linking elements of the text to the author's life. So the correct answer for this question is letter B. And for our last question, an English major student examines the dreams and hallucinations in Wuthering Heights, suggesting that characters like Heathcliff and Catherine express unconscious desires and emotional trauma. Which literary lens is being applied? A. Psychoanalytic criticism. B. Feminist criticism. C. Marxist criticism. D. Post-colonial criticism. The correct answer for this question is letter A, psychoanalytic criticism. Well, psychoanalytic criticism draws on theories of Sigmund Freud and others to explore the unconscious mind of the characters or the authors themselves. It focuses on the hidden desires, psychological traumas, fears, repressed memories, and emotional conflicts. Well, in the statement or in the questions, the student looks at the dreams and hallucination, which often represents unconscious thoughts or feelings. Well, Heathcliff and Catherine's behaviors and mental states in the novel are seen as an expression of deep emotional trauma and repressed desires. Well, the answer for question number 10 is the psychoanalytic criticism. So that's psychoanalytic criticism. That would be all for this episode. I hope that you enjoyed answering these following questions, and I hope that you all recall the critical approaches that we learned from the past. And I hope that you will be successful in taking the exam, and I hope that we all will pass the licensure exam for teachers. Thank you so much and God bless.